The bond between animals and humans can be powerful, sometimes defying logic. While many of us share deep connections with pets like cats or dogs, forming such a bond with a large predator is a different matter entirely. A single swipe of a lion's massive paw can be deadly. Their instincts are primal, their strength unmatched, and yet, in rare cases, trust and love can bridge the gap between the wild and the human heart. Adolph was a seasoned animal trainer, accustomed to working with all kinds of creatures. One day, by pure chance, he stumbled upon a tiny, helpless lion cub. No one knew where it came from, and at first glance, the people who found it mistook it for an ordinary kitten. Starving and scared, the cub needed help fast. Without hesitation, Adolph took it into his care, knowing that leaving it alone would mean certain death. He brought the cub to a wildlife reserve, a sanctuary where it could be nurtured properly. Seeing its bright eyes and golden fur, he named it Chilaya, a name inspired by the Lion King, but also carrying a deeper meaning. In various languages, it signified the precious light of God. And just like its name, Chilaya soon became a light in Adolph's life. From the beginning, Adolph treated Chilaya like his own child. He fed her, played with her, and made sure she was always safe and happy. Chilaya, in return, adored him, responding to his love with playful nuzzles and affectionate purrs. At that time, she was just a fluffy little cub, small enough to fit into his arms. But as Adolph well knew, she would not stay that way forever. As the months passed, Chilaya grew rapidly. What was once a tiny cub now had the size and power of a young lioness. The change was both fascinating and daunting. Though she still sought affection, her natural instincts started to emerge. She began stalking animals around the reserve, practicing the hunting skills embedded deep in her DNA. Her playful pounces became more forceful, her once clumsy swipes gaining strength. Adolph had always known that keeping a lion in a wildlife reserve was only a temporary solution. The more Chilaya grew, the clearer it became she needed a true home. A lion cannot live in captivity forever, not without consequences. But letting her go was not a simple decision. Releasing her into the wild was impossible. Lions live in prides, and a lone lioness with no family or hunting experience would struggle to survive. Many suggested sending Chilaya to a specialized institution, where large carnivores could be properly cared for. After much deliberation, Adolph made a heartbreaking decision. The White Tiger Foundation in Mexico City, known for its work with big cats, agreed to take Chilaya in. It was the best choice for her future, but it came at a cost. Adolph would have to say goodbye. On the day of Chilaya's departure, Adolph stood by the transport vehicle, watching as she was gently guided into a large enclosure. She seemed confused, hesitant to leave his side. As the doors shut, a deep sadness settled in his heart. He had raised her from a fragile cub to a strong and magnificent lioness, and now he had to let her go. At the White Tiger Foundation, Chilaya took time to adjust. At first, she was withdrawn, pacing restlessly, searching for the man who had raised her. But as time passed, she adapted. She found a new home, a new pride of fellow big cats, and gradually, she seemed to forget her past. Adolph, however, never forgot Chilaya. Though he continued working with animals at the reserve, there was always an emptiness in his heart. He often wondered if she still remembered him, if the lioness he had once cradled in his arms still thought of him. Years passed, 7 to be exact. Finally, with enough time and resources, Adolph decided to visit Chilaya. It was a risk. After so long, she might not recognize him at all. She had grown into a fully mature lioness, leading her own life. The bond they once shared could be nothing more than a distant memory to her. And yet, he had to see her, even if only from afar. When Adolph arrived at the foundation, the staff warned him. This could be dangerous. They said, Chilaya is no longer a cub. If she doesn't remember you, she may see you as a threat. Despite the risks, Adolph was determined. With careful steps, he approached her enclosure. At first, Chilaya paced back and forth, her golden eyes locked onto him, wary and alert. He called her name, his voice steady but filled with emotion. For a moment, she paused. The silence was thick with tension. Then, In an instant, Chilaya ran toward him at full speed. The staff held their breath. Was she attacking? Was this a tragic mistake? Before anyone could intervene, Chilaya leaped, her massive paws knocking Adolph to the ground. But instead of violence, she wrapped her huge limbs around him, nuzzling his face, making deep, throaty sounds of recognition. It was not an attack. It was a hug. She remembered him. Tears filled Adolph's eyes as he embraced a lioness who had once been a tiny cub in his arms. She pressed her head against his chest, just like she had always done as a baby. The bond they had built all those years ago had not faded. Time had passed, but love had remained. Those who witnessed the reunion were in awe. Even after 7 years, Chilaya had not forgotten the man who had saved her. Despite the natural instinct of a predator, despite the time and distance, their connection had survived. For a while, Adolph stayed with Chilaya, cherishing every moment. She clung to him as if she were still the tiny cub he had raised, refusing to let him go. And in that moment, he knew, no matter how much time passed, no matter how far apart they were, the love between them would never fade. It was a bond that time could not break.